We were talking earlier this week about Prime Minister Keir Starmer's ambitious yet ultimately doomed plans to build 1.5 million new homes in the UK within the next 5 years. Don't worry, I'm not going to revisit that. I think we talked that out pretty thoroughly already. But yesterday I was reading The Big Issue. You know, the magazine to help the homeless? Well, not surprisingly, The Big Issue has a lot to say on the subject of homes. Homes in general and on empty homes in particular. According to a recent study by Action on Empty Homes, there are just under 1 million homes in the UK that are not currently in use. Now, admittedly, that figure does include almost 280,000 second homes that are currently unoccupied. I'm not suggesting we seize second homes to house the homeless. Yes, there are some unscrupulous landlords out there, but there are also many people who've worked bloody hard to get themselves a second property as part of their retirement plan. But even if you take those 280,000 second homes out of the equation, that still leaves more than 700,000 homes that could be occupied but currently aren't. If those existing homes were filled, Keir Starmer could cut his overly ambitious plans in half, making that plan a whole lot more likely to succeed. Now, as I said, I'm not planning to revisit that. We've talked that to death. But this did set me thinking about how this might apply to the current skill shortage that is gripping the UK demolition and construction sector. We know the figures of how many workers we supposedly need to attract, but does the industry actually have the equivalent of those 700,000 plus empty homes? Well, yes, it does. There are thousands of workers out there right now that, for one reason or another, are not currently occupied in work terms. Like those empty homes, they're fit for purpose, they're ready to go, but they're not being utilised. So how many demolition and construction workers are sat at home right now, 2 weeks before Christmas, because the project they're earmarked for doesn't start until the new year? How many are sat at home because they hold a competence card, but it's the wrong colour? How many are sat at home right now because they arrived for work on a new site wearing yellow, only to be told it's an all-orange PPE site? How many are sat at home now because they were wearing the wrong boots? How many are sat at home because they're on pain medication and they failed a drug test as a result? How many are sat at home because they were injured at work? How many are sat at home because they broke under the stress heaped upon them by a previous employer or a supervisor? How many are sat at home because they were outspoken about safety and have been labelled a rabble-rouser or a troublemaker? How many are sat at home because their face didn't fit or because they weren't part of some on-site clique? How many are sat at home because they expressed their concern about working alongside colleagues that were clearly under the influence of drugs or alcohol? And probably most timely of all, how many will be sat at home after the 31st of December when the end of grandfather rights robs them of their CSCS competence cards? Now, this isn't just a list of hypotheticals. Each of these situations represents a person, a trained, capable and valuable worker, left idle because of bureaucracy, mismanagement, or petty on-site politics. And the consequences are enormous. For the workers, it's lost income, stress, a feeling of uselessness. For the industry, it's a self-inflicted wound, widening the so-called skill shortage that's strangling progress. The irony of it all is infuriating. While we bang the drum about attracting new talent, hosting job fairs and launching campaigns to inspire the next generation, we leave experienced, trained workers sitting at home, twiddling their thumbs, their skills going to waste. Like the housing crisis, where 1 million homes sit empty while thousands sleep rough, the construction sector is failing to utilise what it already has. Imagine if we took the same approach to workers as we should to those empty homes. What if we actively sought out the workers sidelined by red tape, minor oversights, or unfortunate circumstance? What if we found ways to rehabilitate or reintegrate them into the workforce, just as we should be finding ways to bring back empty homes back into use? Take the workers who failed drug tests because of prescribed painkillers. Why not implement better testing systems that distinguish between illegal drug use and legitimate medical treatment? What about the workers injured on the job? Why aren't we offering more meaningful rehabilitation programs that not only heal their bodies, but also ease their transition back into the workforce? Take the workers pushed out because of safety concerns. Instead of labelling them troublemakers, why aren't we listening to them and addressing their concerns? And the end of grandfather rights is another glaring example. Thousands of older workers, many with decades of experience, will lose their competence cards overnight. Does anybody believe the industry is in such a surplus of talent that it can afford to let those workers go? Or is this another case of misplaced priorities where the pursuit of regulation trumps the practical needs of the industry? And then there are what I can only call cultural issues. Workers excluded because of petty dress codes or site-specific rules that prioritize conformity over competence and good sense. Workers ostracized for not fitting in with the social dynamics of a particular crew. These are not insurmountable problems. They're fixable, but only if we're willing to admit they exist and commit to addressing them. If the government were to take advantage of all those houses lying empty, more than 700,000 people could be housed immediately. They could put a massive dent in the nation's homelessness problem. Similarly, if the demolition and construction industry were to take advantage of all those workers currently warming their sofas, the skill shortage could be eradicated instantly. The workers exist, the skills exist, the need exists. What's missing is the will to connect the dots, to bridge the gap between potential and reality. And that's a failure of leadership, not just in government, but across the industry. We're constantly told that we need to think big, to innovate, to be bold in solving the problems of our time. But maybe, just maybe, the solutions aren't as grand or as complex as we've been led to believe. Maybe the solutions are already in front of us, quietly waiting for someone to notice them. A boarded up house on a quiet street, a competent worker on a worn out sofa, both ready, willing, and able to be part of the solution, if only somebody would give them the chance. So, to the policymakers, the industry leaders, and frankly, anyone else who claims to care about the housing crisis or the skill shortage, I'll leave you with this. Stop looking for answers in the abstract. Stop reinventing the wheel. Instead, take a long, hard look at what you already have, because sometimes the key to progress isn't about building something new. Sometimes it's as simple as using what you already have.